This is the Legge and Quentin Grant again on the signing day edition of what we call Yip Yap, which is just where we talk about different things, different topics all the time. And seeing as Georgia's basketball season looks like it's going quickly down the tubes, and the biggest day is right on top of us, Quentin, signing day. We're going to talk about some of the guys that Georgia's got. Let's just start off with Summerville, South Carolina's A.J. Green. Tell me what you think of A.J. from what you've seen. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, probably the best high school wide receiver I probably would say I've ever seen, which is a really big statement to make. I know I watched what's the kid's name? Was it Julio Jones, is how you say it, the #1 kid in the country on ESPN the night he was on, and I think A.J. Green is just as good. Excellent at making plays on balls. He seems to always, if it's around him, he seems to just find a way to catch it. And he's a stud in every sense of the word, and probably the prize of this recruiting class for Georgia.
Yeah, it seems like that. And when I went to go visit him not that long ago, I went during a basketball practice, Quentin, and he was saying that, or the basketball coach was saying, hey, listen, Georgia would like for him to play basketball there. That's just how athletic he is. He is super skilled, and has been a big-time deal for Summerville for 3 years or so, and has been dealing with all that goes with that for a long time now. One guy, another A.J., Quentin, that we both have seen a lot of, A.J. Harmon. What were your thoughts about him immediately in the spring, and had things changed from that time? He was getting a lot of publicity back then.
Yeah, he got a lot of pub, but A.J. moves really, really well to be as big as he is. When we go and watch these high school kids, especially the big linemen, you don't see many that move that well. Even the guys who are four-star type guys, they just don't tend to move as well because they're just catching up. But A.J. moves pretty well. You can tell that A.J.'s a good athlete. I'd be willing to bet, and you probably know him a little better than I do, that A.J.'s probably a heck of a basketball player too. He just he looks like a kid that could probably play. He has that type of athletic ability. I do think he's going to be better suited for the offensive line than defensive line, which is where I think everybody realizes he'll probably end up at Georgia.
A.J. Harmon's always going to struggle with his weight. He knows that. He's dealt with that. But he told me it's tough to combat that during the season because, some guys lose weight during the season. Most guys do. But for A.J., it's one thing to lose 10 pounds, but for somebody like A.J. to play defensive line, he's going to probably have to lose 25, 30 pounds. And that's tough to do. Now, he's got a lot of willpower, but we'll see what happens with him.
Dean, I'm wondering how serious has A.J. been with the weight room, too? It'd be another thing. As far as gaining and losing weight, adding that muscle, which if you look on his frame, there's places where he can add muscle too. So,
well, we'll see. I don't know that there's a much better strength and conditioning place than at Georgia. I mean, there's no question that David Hallinger and Keith and those guys, they did just an excellent job of getting those guys at Georgia ready. A guy who is either growing or is hitting the weight room pretty hard has been Toby Jackson. He's about 6'5", 260, which is about 20 pounds more than he was this time last year, and he's running slightly less than a 4.7 40. Quentin, you saw him. He didn't have a great day, and when we saw him against other guys at the Scout.com Combine in May, what did you think about Toby that day in terms of size and all that stuff?
Size-wise, I mean, he's a monster. I mean, there's no doubt about that. He didn't have a great day that day, and that's one of those things where when you see him one day, you can only, especially linemen, it's hard to take, lineman is such a potential thing. And the recruitment, I think, of linemen is, we've said it on here before, that it's very, very hard to judge lineman talent. But if the kid is that big and running a 4.7 40, then there's obviously some good things about it. He's a big kid. He's also an athletic kid. He didn't seem to move as well as an A.J. Harmon, but a lot of times these type guys, they kind of grow into their bodies right about now too.
260. I mean, isn't that what you want?
Yeah, I think that's everything you want, and I got a feeling he'll be a good player at Georgia.
Scott Kennedy spoke with him earlier today and said, and Toby's one of the quotes he said to him was, "I've been putting on a lot of weight, but it's positive weight." I don't doubt that. Toby was playing linebacker in the for Griffin this past fall. He's not a linebacker. He's a defensive lineman. He may well wind up a defensive tackle. I think he'll start out at defensive end. Toby Jackson is the type of frame that you see now that develops into an NFL body. Dante Jackson, Quentin, one of your favorite guys.
Yeah, great kid. Great kid to talk to. You could tell from the beginning, we've been over and over this, how he wanted to go to Georgia. Georgia was a place that was in his heart. You really thought from the beginning. Excellent speed, great build, maybe a little short. Maybe might be the only knock on Dontavius that I could provide. Now, the thing about it is being a successful running back in Georgia is not going to be easy with the competition he's going to be going up against. But I would be surprised if you don't see Dante Jackson play a good bit for Georgia before it's all said and done in his 5 years there.
Dontavius has got a bright future ahead of him. Tavares King has been overshadowed probably by A.J. Green, which is a shame because, you know, he caught our eye some time ago, Quentin, the first time he was at that camp in 2006 in Athens at the Mark Richt camp. Man, he looked good. He was young, slender. Give me your thoughts on him about that day, and I'll tell you what I thought about him when I watched him play a couple different times this year.
Well, he was really skinny the first time we saw him. I mean, he was tiny, but, I mean, not height-wise, but just his build. But, boy, he has great hands and seems to do things really, really well. And I even told somebody the other day that I would be real surprised if he doesn't see playing time next year, because he seems to be the type of kid that'll get things quick. And I'll also be willing to bet that he can block, which is a thing that's going to get you on the field. And as we know, the wide receiver talent at Georgia is not the greatest thing. It's not the most prized position at Georgia right now. And guys like him and A.J. Green could probably play next year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Tavares play because I bet he'll be able to block, and I think he'll be okay.
You know what the knock has been on him is that, he's too small. He got bigger, and let me tell you something. I don't know that I saw a better high school player this year. I watched, that's a little unfair to A.J. Green because the time I went to go see him, he had a very difficult day with those, three D1 corners back, or secondary guys back there. Tavares lit people up every game. Didn't matter who it was. Didn't matter if it was the starting quarterback or his backup throwing him the ball. He really came into his own. And Georgia's two receivers are going to. In high school, they made people pay 5 touchdowns for Green in a game. Tavares resetting every single high school record in that area of the state. Those guys are going to be productive for Georgia. And one guy that they're going to be dealing with on the practice field, Brandon Boykin. Do you remember the day he didn't eat one day and was about to pass out, but he kept going into these drills when we were in Atlanta at that combine. And he really needed to get something into his system. It wasn't funny, but it was funny. That guy's a very determined cat and had a lot of it wasn't just him, but Matt Daniels and he at Fayette County, those two took Fayette on their shoulders and took them as far as they could go, which was a quarterfinal loss, if I'm not mistaken, to Tucker. And that's a big deal. Quentin, Fayette had lost for a long time and really is not considered much of a football school. But Brandon Boykin, do you recall the hips and all that stuff, Quentin?
Yeah, he was probably the best DB kid we saw that day. He didn't catch my eye at first until you pointed him out, and then certain things he did. You know what made him not so noticeable was that he moved effortlessly. Yeah. And you didn't really pay that any attention until you really watched him, and you're like, God, this kid's really moving quickly. He just didn't look like he was moving that fast. And they were right. That was the day he did not eat. But, another solid kid. You keep going back to how excellent of a recruiting class Georgia's got right now, because all of these guys are really good players.
All right, man. We'll get back with everybody here soon. That was Yip Yap for this week.